The massive alien ship hung in Earth's orbit like a shimmering silver leaf, its surface reflecting the sun's rays in a dazzling display. Inside the vessel, the alien observers stared at their readings with their 4 eyes wide in disbelief. They had discovered many worlds before, but none quite like this. "Impossible," muttered First Observer Gray, his tentacles twitching nervously as he reviewed the planetary data for the 3rd time. "The gravity is crushing, the atmosphere is corrosive, and the temperature swings are extreme. How can anything survive here?" The readings showed Earth as a Class 12 death world, a designation so rare that most believed it to be theoretical. The very fact that not only did life exist here, but that it had produced an intelligent species, went against everything they thought they knew about planetary development. Down on Earth, Captain James Walker stood at attention in the United Nations meeting hall, waiting for humanity's first official contact with alien life. His weathered face remained calm, though his heart raced with excitement. As head of Earth's newly formed defense force, he had been chosen to meet the alien delegation. The aliens materialized in a flash of blue light. Their environmental suits looked bulky and complex, with multiple layers of protection against Earth's harsh conditions. Captain Walker fought back a smile as he watched them check and double-check their suit readings. "Welcome to Earth," he said simply, extending his hand in greeting. The aliens flinched at his casual movement, their instruments frantically analyzing the air he had disturbed. You stand here without protection." First Observer Gray's translator conveyed both his words and his horror. In these conditions, Walker looked around the comfortable room, maintained at a pleasant 72 degrees Fahrenheit. "These are ideal conditions for us," he explained, "though we can survive in much worse." The alien delegation huddled together, discussing in their own language. Their instruments showed that the human before them was generating heat, producing carbon dioxide, and surviving in what they considered a toxic soup of nitrogen and oxygen. Yet he seemed completely at ease. The meeting continued, with the aliens growing increasingly disturbed as they learned more about Earth. When Walker mentioned that humans regularly survived temperatures ranging from -50 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 of the junior observers had to leave the room to compose themselves. "And you're young." First Observer Gray seemed particularly troubled by this topic. "They survive birth in these conditions. We've evolved to handle it," Walker explained patiently. "Our children are born adapted to Earth's environment." The aliens' reaction to human dietary habits was even more dramatic. The concept of consuming other organisms for sustenance, combined with the ability to digest multiple types of matter, left them thoroughly shaken. Yet as the meeting progressed, urgent news arrived from the alien ship. Long-range sensors had detected something approaching, something that made even Earth's harsh conditions seem trivial in comparison. First Observer Gray's color shifted to a pale blue as he read the report. "Captain Walker," he said, his translator struggling to convey his anxiety, "we came here expecting to find primitives barely surviving on a deadly world. Instead, we found something else entirely." He paused, his tentacles twisting together. "And now we find ourselves hoping that your species' adaptation to these extreme conditions might be exactly what the galaxy needs." Walker leaned forward, his interest piqued. "What exactly are we dealing with?" "A threat unlike any we faced before," Gray replied. "One that our advanced civilizations, evolved in gentle environments, may not be able to handle." He looked directly at Walker. "But perhaps a species that calls a death world home might have a better chance." As Walker listened to the alien's explanation, he realized that humanity's greatest challenge, and perhaps its greatest opportunity to prove itself, was about to begin. Earth's classification as a death world, initially seen as a mark of primitiveness, might just be its greatest strength. The holographic display filled the center of the United Nations Emergency Chamber, showing a mass of crystalline shapes moving through space. The alien threat looked like a swarm of jagged diamonds, each one the size of a small city, Ambassador Reed stood before the Galactic Council's representatives, her face illuminated by the ghostly blue light of the projection. "How many worlds have they consumed?" she asked, her voice steady despite the disturbing images. First Observer Gray's color darkened to a deep purple. 17 colonies in the outer systems. They're silicon-based life forms that consume everything in their path. Our energy weapons pass right through them, and our shields can't stop their crystalline projections. The Council's most advanced battleship appeared on the display. Its sleek form, nearly 5 miles long, fired brilliant beams of energy at the crystal swarm. The beams simply reflected off the creature's surfaces, causing no damage. "That ship was lost with all hands," another alien representative added. "Nothing in our arsenal affects these beings. They simply don't follow the rules of combat as we understand them." Reed watched the footage carefully, her military training kicking in. "Have you tried physical weapons? Kinetic impacts? Explosives?" The aliens shifted uncomfortably. "We abandoned such primitive weapons centuries ago," Gray explained. "Our civilizations evolved beyond the need for such crude tools of destruction." A small smile crossed Reed's face. "Well, that's one area where humanity's primitive nature might come in handy." She pressed a button, and the display changed to show Earth's military capabilities. "We still maintain a vast arsenal of kinetic weapons, explosives, and what you might call crude but effective tools." The aliens watched in horror as the display showed missiles, rail guns, and various weapons that used physical force rather than energy. Their horror turned to fascination as Reed explained humanity's long history of surviving catastrophic events. "Our species has endured multiple extinction-level events," she continued. "Ice ages, supervolcanoes, meteoric impacts. Earth has tried to kill us many times, but we've adapted and survived. We're not just used to harsh conditions, we're forged by them." First Observer Gray's translator crackled as he spoke. "You mean to tell us that your species has already survived several planetary disasters that would have wiped out most civilizations?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Reed replied. "And we've kept all the tools and instincts that helped us survive. Tools that might work against your crystal swarm." The emergency chamber erupted in discussion. The alien representatives spoke rapidly in their various languages, their translators struggling to keep up. Finally, Gray raised all 4 of his arms for silence. "The Galactic Council has always looked down on Deathworld species as primitive and dangerous," he admitted. "But perhaps that is exactly what we need right now." Reed nodded. "Earth volunteers to be your front line of defense. We'll need your help with space travel and targeting systems, but we'll provide the weapons and the warriors. After all, we're used to fighting in conditions that would kill most species." The aliens huddled together, discussing in hushed tones. Meanwhile, Reed received an urgent message on her tablet. The crystal swarm had changed course. It was now heading directly toward Earth. Gray noticed her expression change. "Bad news." "Actually," Reed said, a determined look in her eyes, "this might be exactly what we need. They're coming to us, to our home territory. If there's one thing humans are good at, it's defending our home." The alien representatives watched in amazement as Reed immediately began coordinating with Earth's military forces. The calm efficiency with which humans prepared for what they considered an apocalyptic threat was both terrifying and inspiring. The first battle in humanity's greatest war would be fought in their own solar system. And perhaps, as the aliens were beginning to realize, that was the best possible scenario for everyone except the crystal swarm. The underground military base buzzed with activity as humans and aliens worked side by side. Lieutenant Anna Miller watched as her team loaded another massive tungsten rod into the modified railgun. The weapon was longer than 3 football fields, a combination of human ballistic technology and alien power systems. "You really think this will work?" asked First Observer Gray, his environmental suit humming as it filtered Earth's air. He still couldn't believe humans breathed this mixture naturally. "Think about it," Miller replied, patting the railgun's thick barrel. Your energy weapons pass right through the crystals because they're designed to affect organic matter. But this beauty will hit them with the force of a small meteor. Even crystals shatter under enough physical force. The aliens watched in fascination as the humans worked tirelessly, despite the high temperature in the underground facility. The cooling systems had failed hours ago, but the humans simply removed their outer layers and continued working, their bodies adapting to the heat that would have killed most alien species. In another section of the base, Dr. Marcus Thompson worked with alien scientists to modify their shield technology. The aliens had been shocked when he suggested using their defensive shields as weapons. "If we reverse the polarity and concentrate the force," he explained, wiping sweat from his forehead, "we can create a crushing effect instead of a barrier, like a giant pressure cooker." The aliens winced at his casual reference to using extreme pressure as a cooking method. The preparation continued day and night. Humans worked in shifts, but even their rest periods amazed the aliens. They would sleep for just a few hours on hard surfaces, consume their nutrient-rich coffee, and return to work immediately. "Your people don't need recovery chambers," one alien scientist asked Miller. "No atmospheric adjustment periods." Miller laughed as she calibrated another targeting system. "We're used to pushing through discomfort. It's kind of our thing." The first test of their hybrid weapons took place in the desert. The aliens insisted on watching from a protected bunker, but the human observers stood in the open, wearing simple protective glasses. The railgun fired its tungsten rod at a small asteroid in orbit. The impact shattered the space rock into thousands of pieces. "Imagine what that will do to your crystal friends," Miller said, grinning at the successful test. The aliens merely stared at her, still adjusting to humanity's casual attitude toward such destruction. But the real breakthrough came when Thompson's team tested the modified shields. They created a bubble of crushing force that could compact anything inside it. The demonstration reduced a test object to powder in seconds. "The crystals may be hard," Thompson explained, "but under enough pressure, everything has a breaking point. We just had to think like Earth. She's been crushing and reforming materials for billions of years." As the preparations entered their final phase, the alien observers began to understand why humans were different. They watched as Miller's team ran combat drills in full gear despite the scorching heat. They saw Thompson work for 30 hours straight, solving complex equations while surviving on nothing but coffee and determination. First Observer Gray recorded a message for the Galactic Council. "I now understand why Earth is classified as a death world. It's not just the harsh conditions, it's what those conditions created. These humans don't just survive here. They thrive on overcoming challenges that would kill most species. And now, they're turning that same adaptability toward protecting the galaxy." The crystal swarm was now just days away from Earth's solar system. But unlike the alien worlds that fell before, Earth was ready. Ready with weapons that could actually hurt the crystalline entities. Ready with shields that could be turned into crushing weapons. And most importantly, ready with warriors who had evolved on a planet that had spent billions of years trying to kill them. The real question wasn't whether humans could handle the coming battle. It was whether the crystal swarm was ready to face the species that called a death world home. The first crystal appeared at the edge of the solar system, its massive form glinting in the dim sunlight. Commander Tom Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the Earth defense ship Thunder as more crystals emerged from deep space. Each one was the size of Manhattan, their surfaces reflecting light like giant diamonds. "Multiple contacts," his tactical officer reported. "At least 300 crystal entities entering the system." The alien advisor on the bridge, wearing his bulky environmental suit, trembled at the sight. The last time he had seen this many crystals, they had consumed an entire colony world. But this time was different. This time, they had humans. "Launch the first wave," Rodriguez ordered. His voice remained steady as railguns across the fleet loaded their tungsten rods. "Let's show them how we deal with threats on Earth." The fleet's guns fired in sequence. Massive metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds, turning into streaks of light as they crossed space. The crystals didn't even try to dodge. They had never needed to before. The first impacts shattered several crystals into clouds of glittering fragments. Direct hits. The tactical officer's voice rang with excitement. Confirmed kills on multiple targets. The crystal swarm reacted instantly. They had never encountered resistance like this before. Crystalline spears shot out from their surfaces, deadly projectiles that could pierce normal shields. But Thompson's modified shield technology was ready. Activate crush fields. Rodriguez commanded. The defensive bubbles around the Earth ships transformed into zones of intense pressure. When the crystal spears entered these fields, they didn't just stop. They crumbled into dust. The alien advisor watched in amazement as the human crews worked their stations. Despite the intense gravity shifts from evasive maneuvers, despite the blaring alarms and the constant threat of death, they seemed almost energized by the challenge. A crystal shard the size of a bus pierced the Thunder's hull, exposing part of the bridge to space. Emergency force fields snapped into place, but the temperature plummeted. The alien advisor's suit went into emergency mode, but the humans simply pulled on oxygen masks and kept fighting. Breach on deck 1. Someone shouted. Seal it off, Rodriguez replied calmly, even as ice formed on his console. Rear out power to the forward guns. The battle raged for hours. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked both their allies and their enemies. When a sister ship lost power, its crew continued firing their weapons manually, using backup systems that seemed primitive but worked perfectly in the crisis. Rodriguez himself took a hit when his console exploded, shrapnel cutting through his arm. The alien advisor expected him to seek medical attention, but the commander simply wrapped a bandage around the wound and continued giving orders. Your injury requires treatment, the alien insisted. It can wait, Rodriguez replied, not taking his eyes off the tactical display. We've got them on the run. He was right. The crystal swarm had never encountered a species that could actually hurt them, let alone one that would continue fighting despite injuries, equipment failures, and environmental hazards. For the first time in their existence, the crystals began to retreat. They're pulling back, the tactical officer reported. Multiple contacts leaving the system. The bridge crew cheered, their voices hoarse from breathing the cold air. They had lost ships, lost friends, but they had proven something crucial. The crystals could be beaten. The alien advisor sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council. First engagement successful. Human tactics effective against crystal entities. Most importantly, humans continue fighting under conditions that would incapacitate most species. Their Deathworld adaptation gives them unprecedented combat endurance. As medical teams finally arrived on the bridge, Rodriguez was already planning the next phase. The crystals had learned that Earth wasn't an easy target, but he knew they would be back. And next time, humanity would be even better prepared. Get me a damage report, he ordered, finally letting a medic look at his arm. And tell the fleet to prepare for pursuit. We're not letting them regroup. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber had changed dramatically in the weeks since the first battle. Gone were the climate-controlled environments for each species. Instead, the alien representatives sat in standard gravity and atmosphere, uncomfortable but adapting, just as humans had taught them. Dr. Lisa Cooper stood before them, her lab coat still dusty from her latest experiment. Behind her, a massive screen showed the crystalline fragments her team had collected after the battle. The aliens leaned forward, their natural colors shifting with interest. We've been looking at this all wrong, Cooper explained, manipulating the holographic display. These crystals aren't just weapons, they're alive. And like any living thing, they have weaknesses. She zoomed in on a crystal's molecular structure. See these patterns? They're not random. The crystals grow in specific ways, just like life on Earth. And that's their weakness. First Observer Gray, now wearing a much simpler environmental suit, moved closer to the display. Explain, Doctor. How does this help us? Cooper smiled. On Earth, we have something called crystal twinning. It's a defect in crystal formation that creates weak points. We found a way to force these defects in the crystal entities, make them grow wrong. The chamber erupted in excited discussion. The aliens had never considered using the creature's own growth patterns against them. It was a typically human approach, turning an enemy's strength into a weakness. Meanwhile, in the orbital training station, Commander Rodriguez watched as alien soldiers attempted to operate in Earth normal gravity. Many struggled, their bodies unused to the constant pressure. But they kept trying, inspired by human persistence. "Your bodies can adapt," he told them. "Ours did, over millions of years. You can do it in weeks. Pain is just weakness leaving your body." The aliens had been shocked by this human saying, but they were beginning to understand its wisdom. In the station's lab, Dr. Thompson worked with Cooper's findings, developing a new weapon. "The crystals are like ice," he explained to his alien assistants. "Strong in some directions, weak in others. We just need to hit them at the right angle with the right force." The aliens watched in fascination as he demonstrated with a small crystal sample. A precisely aimed sonic pulse caused it to shatter along its natural fault lines. It was elegant yet brutal, much like humanity itself. "Your species continues to surprise us," Gray told Cooper later that day. "You don't just survive adversity. You learn from it, use it, even teach others to do the same." Cooper nodded, remembering Earth's long history. "That's because we've always had to adapt. Earth never made anything easy for us. We had to become strong, clever, and tough just to survive. Now we can pass those lessons on to the galaxy." The breakthrough came during a routine test. Cooper's team discovered that the crystal entities communicated using vibrations, like living crystals on Earth. This revelation led to a new strategy. They could disrupt the swarm's coordination. "It's not enough to just break them," Cooper explained to the council. "We need to prevent them from working together. On Earth, we learned that disrupting communication is often more effective than direct attacks." The aliens began to see why Deathworld adaptation was so valuable. Humans didn't just survive. They understood survival on a fundamental level. They could look at a threat and see not just what it was, but how it could be defeated. As the combined fleet prepared for their next encounter with the Crystal Swarm, the galaxy was changing. Species that had once looked down on primitive humans now sought their guidance. The harsh lessons of Earth were spreading through the galaxy, making everyone stronger. The crystals had meant to destroy them. Instead, they had united the galaxy under humanity's harsh but effective leadership. The next battle would show just how much the galaxy had learned from the inhabitants of the Deathworld. The combined fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Arcturus system. 5,000 ships, crewed by beings from across the galaxy, all trained in human combat techniques. At their head, the Earth flagship Thunderchild carried Major Mike Turner and his team of specialists. The Crystal Swarm waited for them. Hundreds of thousands of crystalline shapes filled space like a field of deadly diamonds, their central mass glowing with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "All ships, battle positions," Turner ordered. His voice was steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. "Remember your training. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't stop until they break." The alien crews, once soft and cautious, now moved with purpose. They had trained under Earth gravity, learned to fight through pain, and understood that survival sometimes meant embracing discomfort. They were ready. "Enemy crystals approaching," the tactical officer reported. "They're using new formations." Turner nodded. The crystals had adapted after their defeat at Earth, becoming smarter, more dangerous. But so had the combined fleet. "Launch disruptor probes," he commanded. "Let's scramble their communication first." Thousands of small devices shot out from the fleet, broadcasting the frequencies Dr. Cooper had discovered. The Crystal Swarm's elegant formation began to waver as their coordination broke down. "All ships, implement attack pattern Delta," Turner ordered. The fleet split into smaller groups, just as they had practiced. It was a human hunting technique, adapted for space warfare. Divide the prey, isolate the weak ones, take them down one by one. The battle erupted across the star system. Rail guns fired their tungsten rods while modified shields crushed crystal fragments into dust. The aliens fought with a ferocity they had learned from humans, pushing through despite damage and casualties. Central mass is still intact, someone reported. Our weapons aren't penetrating deep enough. Turner studied the tactical display. The crystal swarm's heart pulsed stronger now, sending out waves of energy that seemed to repair damaged crystals. They needed to strike at its core, but the defensive screen was too thick. "We need a gap in their defenses," Turner muttered. Then he saw it, a pattern in their movement, a weakness that reminded him of Earth's predators when they protected their young. They're guarding something in that central mass, something vital. He made his decision. All ships, focus fire on Sector 7. Draw their defenses to that point. As the fleet concentrated their attack, the crystals responded exactly as he predicted, moving to protect that sector. "Thunderchild will punch through their weak spot," Turner announced. "Once we clear a path, all ships target the central mass with everything you have." The alien commanders protested. "The radiation levels near the core will kill any crew instantly." "Then we better make it count," Turner replied. He turned to his crew. "Anyone who wants to evacuate, now's the time." Not a single crew member moved. They were humans, after all. Death was just another challenge to overcome. The Thunderchild accelerated toward the crystal swarm's heart, its engines pushing far beyond safety limits. Crystal spears pierced its hull, but the ship pressed on. Warning sirens blared as radiation levels soared, but the crew remained at their posts. 20 seconds to impact, the navigation officer called out, his voice rough from the toxic air leaking into the bridge. Turner felt his skin burning from the radiation, but he kept his eyes on the target. "For Earth," he said quietly. "For all of us." The Thunderchild struck the central mass like a bullet through glass. The crystalline heart shattered, its pieces flying apart in a spectacular display of light and energy. The ship and its crew were gone in an instant, but they had done their job. All ships opened fire. The combined fleet unleashed everything they had at the exposed core. Without their central coordination, the remaining crystals began to break apart, their deadly efficiency replaced by chaos. The battle was won, but at a terrible cost. As the fleet regrouped, the alien commanders finally understood something fundamental about their human allies. True strength wasn't about being invulnerable. It was about being willing to sacrifice everything to protect others. The age of the crystal swarm was over. The age of humanity had begun. 6 months after the final battle, Earth hosted the first Galactic Council meeting ever held on a death world. The alien representatives sat comfortably in Earth's gravity and atmosphere, their bodies adapted through training and determination. They gathered in the Great Hall to honor those who had fallen and to plan for the future. Ambassador Reed stood at the podium, looking out at the changed faces of the galaxy's leaders. Gone were their environmental suits and protective gear. They had learned to adapt, just as humanity had taught them. "The crystal swarm changed us all," she began, "not just through the battles we fought, but through the lessons we learned. The galaxy now understands that comfort breeds weakness, while adversity breeds strength." First Observer Gray, now wearing only a light-breathing filter, nodded in agreement. His species had already begun modifying their home environments to include more challenges, encouraging their youth to grow stronger. "The loss of the Thunderchild and Major Turner's crew struck us all deeply," Reed continued. "But their sacrifice showed the galaxy something that humans have always known, that true strength lies not in avoiding hardship, but in facing it head-on." The hall's displays showed images from across the galaxy. Alien military academies now included Earth-style obstacle courses. Scientists worked in varying gravity conditions. Children were taught to embrace challenges rather than avoid them. Dr. Cooper's research team had expanded, now including scientists from 50 different species. They study the remnants of the crystal swarm, learning from their defeated enemy. The crystal's ability to adapt and grow had led to breakthroughs in materials science and communication technology. "We've revised our classification of Earth," a council member announced. "It's no longer considered a death world. Instead, it's been designated as a crucible world, a planet that forges stronger species through its challenges." The change meant more than just a new name. Across the galaxy, species had begun seeking out harder environments for training. Earth had become a center for military and survival education, with aliens coming to learn from humanity's harsh but effective methods. Commander Rodriguez, now head of the Combined Fleet Academy, took the podium next. His battle scars were visible proof of humanity's resilience. "We lost good people in this war," he said. "But their sacrifice wasn't just for Earth. It was for every species that wants to grow stronger, to push their limits, to become more than they are." The Academy's first class of alien graduates stood at attention. They had survived training that their species once considered impossible. Many had broken bones, endured exhaustion, and pushed through pain, and they were stronger for it. "But perhaps our greatest victory," Reed concluded, "wasn't defeating the crystals. It was showing the galaxy a better way to live. We proved that being comfortable isn't the same as being safe. That being advanced doesn't mean abandoning the traits that helped us survive." The new Galactic Defense Force, created after the war, combined the best of both worlds. Human determination and survival instincts merged with alien technology and knowledge. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. As the ceremony ended, First Observer Gray approached Reed privately. "You know," he said, "when we first discovered Earth, we thought we were finding a primitive world filled with dangerous savages." Reed smiled. "And what did you find instead?" "Teachers," Gray replied. "Your people taught us that true civilization isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about facing it and growing stronger. The crystal swarm meant to destroy us, but instead, they made us realize what we were missing." Outside the hall, Earth's sun set on a changed galaxy. Ships from 100 worlds hung in orbit, their crews training in the harsh conditions that had forged humanity. The age of comfort was over. The age of growth, of challenge, of becoming stronger, it had just begun. And somewhere out in the vastness of space, other threats might be lurking. But this time, they wouldn't face a galaxy of soft, comfortable species. They would face a galaxy that had learned the ultimate lesson of the Deathworlders: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.